Meta introduces new ways for users who have been hacked or lost access to their accounts to get 24/7 assistance on Facebook and Instagram. The new support hub brings all of the company's support tools and options together in one place within the apps, allowing users to report issues, access quick answers through AI-powered search, and many more.
We've heard feedback from small business owners as well as other people on our platforms around their frustrations when they're trying to access help, whether they are hacked or locked out of their account. We want to make sure that people can regain access to their accounts. They can find ways to get plugged in if they have any issues and be able to re access those memories and those connections that they've had and they built throughout the years.